Welcome everybody to our September edition of Office Hours, where we talk about WordPress, we talk about Fly plugins, which is WP Courseware, S3 Media Maestro, and Churnly. We also talk about online business, marketing, anything else you'd like to talk about with regard to online business, making passive income. We love talking about those things. I'm here this morning with my two good friends, Nate Johnson and Corey Crowley, and we make up the Fly Plugins team. Good morning from Arizona.
Morning.
And Denver.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Mile High City.
You got it, man. Yeah.
I think we're the mile below city or something like that.
Yeah, we're
almost like surface. We're almost sea level here.
Sea level, yeah. I think we're at 1,000 feet. I think
1,000 feet. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's all right, Addy.
Well, cool, guys. Excited for this month. We got quite a bit of things to talk about. I think we have a few questions in the queue. So
we do.
Maybe we just hop in, start talking about questions. By the way, if you've joined us this morning and you have a question about anything, go ahead and feel free. If you've joined us on Zoom, there's a chat window in Zoom. If you've joined us via live link on YouTube, there's a chat window on YouTube. Go ahead and enter your question there. If you throw in a question on Facebook or Instagram, I'll be checking those channels as well, so we can make sure we get everybody's questions answered this morning.
Good. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah,
we've got a few in here, and then I know we've got a couple of updates to talk about from the past few weeks, but we can jump into these questions first.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, perfect. All right. I've got one here from Kara. And she wants to, number one, close registration on one of her WP Courseware courses without deleting it. This looks to be a three-part question, some good questions in here. So that's the first one, closing registration on a class without deleting it.
Okay, so closing registration would kind of equate to enrollment. So if you want to prevent enrollment from your online course, what you need to do is you need to either remove your enrollment buttons or if and it all depends on how you're delivering, because if you're using a product like WooCommerce or Easy Digital Downloads or MemberPress or Paid Memberships Pro to sell your courses, those are just different ways people are purchasing your courses. So you can't necessarily close enrollment. But if you're using WP Courseware to sell your courses, you can get rid of your enrollment buttons, and you can also I guess hide your courses page. That's the only other place where enrollment buttons would be accessible.
Yeah, or you could hide the enrollment button on the specific course on the courses page if you just wanted to hide for a specific course. I mean, there's probably multiple ways to do this, but yeah, like Ben said, hiding that enrollment button, if you use the short code on a separate page, remove that short code, or just hide the button either with CSS, or you can even do it with PHP. We do have some snippets out there for that kind of thing for the specific course. So,
maybe at some point we put this on the to-do list, but it sounds like a pretty cool feature to have. Yeah, because if you could shut down enrollment for a specific course where it would automatically do that and hide those enrollment buttons, then you kind of take one less thing out of the mix of having to think to do something. I know for me, automation is key, man. It's whatever makes things easier.
Right.
Well, that was brought up in pre-sales this morning. Actually, someone was asking about they want their course to expire after a certain amount of time, so they want to charge a one-time fee for it, say $300 for complete access, but after a month they want it to go away. So
that's a great feature request, by the way. So
I have added it to our list, and
awesome.
Hopefully we get to that soon.
Yes.
All right, good deal. So that one is good. The second part of Kara's question, and this is a good one because I actually struggle with this sometimes too, the module description being required, and she also asked where it shows up.
So that the module description can show up in a couple different places. That can show up in a course outline, but you have to specify that in your shortcode. You have to enable the module description. It also shows up. It can also show up on your course page, but I believe the template currently does not have that one enabled. Corey, am I right on that one?
That's correct. Right. I mean, because we should really revisit whether or not it should even be required. It just has been for a long time. But it really only shows up in the course outline. It's really the only place it shows up. And it's only if that option is enabled. So
your courses page, which basically has an outline, I mean, it could technically have that, but the only problem is the templates for the course page are pre-configured. Although you can overwrite that if you're handy with PHP, you can create a new template file for that, and you can enable that, because all it is, I think all we're doing in there, Corey, is executing that short code in the template itself.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly right. So you can always make it show up other places. There's ways to do that if you wanted to. But right now, the only place that it auto shows up is in the course outline, course progress, shortcodes. So I put a little feature, a little note to maybe revisit that, whether or not module description is even required in the first place, because it technically shouldn't be. I think in some of our older versions, we had it required because it showed up more, but nowadays it's really focused on the modules usually used for the outline piece, and it's not necessarily needed. It doesn't necessarily need a description.
Right. It is pretty handy, I suppose, if people wanted to provide a synopsis of the units as a group. But for me, actually, because it is required, I always go copy and paste the module title into it just to get it to, it's got something in it at least. We can take a look at that one. All right. Cool. This was a good one too. The last part of Kara's question: how can I set default options for all classes, i.e. instructor, price, certificate settings, etc.?
Oh, so you kind of want to have almost like a template to start from when you're creating a new course, in other words?
For all the settings tabs, right?
Yeah. Corey, do all those settings tabs, do they get exported when you export a course? Or is it just course content, right?
Yeah, and there's not really a default options for all courses. I mean, we've done this specifically because many courses are different, and we have some default options for the courses, but we really don't have a place that you can set default options for every course and then change them individually. So
yeah, one thing that I know is on our list, and I'm not quite sure if it's in our next revision. I don't think it is, but I know it's higher on the priority list, is to have the ability to duplicate courses. So what you could do whenever that feature gets released is you could configure a single course with all your settings. Maybe just put in like a single module, single unit, just blank, and then just kind of have that sitting there as your template. And then I know that we're going to have on that courses index page where you can just, I think, click a button or something that says duplicate course, and it'll duplicate that. So that way you can just going forward. But yeah, unfortunately, we just don't have that right now. I know that is on our to-do list. I've seen that in there here in recent days. Okay. So it's there.
I didn't think about that. That's a good call, because you can export just the course without the modules or units, right?
Yes. Okay. Yes, that's right. You can. So maybe you can do the settings, Corey.
I guess it would update those.
I have to revisit that. And I've not actually exported a course in a while.
But I'm pretty sure that most settings are included in there. I think some are not. But the duplicate course functionality, I think, is going to help with this, and we're working on that for our next release, actually.
Oh, so that is the next release.
Yeah, so I have that on my list for our next release. So.
Okay.
Hopefully we can get that released soon. So, but quick thing while we're on this topic of with Kara, because she reached out in chat. Kara, there's multiple ways to, and I hope I pronounced your name right, There's multiple ways to hide the enrollment button, and she says the duplicate course would be so helpful. And yeah, we agree. That's why we have it on our list to get it released soon. But if you reach out, just submit a support ticket, maybe we can help you or provide you with some CSS to hide that course button. But there's multiple ways to hide that enrollment button. And maybe in the future, we'll have an option inside the course that will say disable enrollment for this course altogether, and that will hide it for you. But for now, it's just a little bit more manual, and may require some code. Okay.
All right. Good deal. Well, I have another, let's see, another 3-part question here from a prospective customer. The first part of it is, let's see, what is needed extra apart from your plugin? And I guess the answer is now, really nothing to create or sell courses.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. So we pretty much have a full-on learning management system which allows you to create and sell online courses, because we now have, I think since 4.4, I believe, or I think it's 4.4, we released the shopping cart with 2 payment gateways. So now you've got the ability to not only build your course, but sell it as well. Now, I know we've had people ask us for, whether there's like the ability to have kind of like a membership type functionality where you can control other aspects of your site, pages, posts, and access to that. And currently WP Courseware is just a learning management system. There's no membership aspect to it. That said, that's not to say that we may not add that in the future, or add maybe a separate add-on at some point that could do something similar to that. But for now, it's just a learning management system. So it's a full package. You can set up online courses and sell them, and put that on autopilot, and it'll just sell and deliver your online courses. It handles enrollment, student management. I mean, the only thing you would have to do is log in and grade quizzes if you have quizzes that require manual grading and things like that. But aside from just basic maintenance, it's pretty much an autopilot business.
Yeah, and we have integrations with other plugins like WooCommerce that offer membership. So if you need that now before we hopefully eventually release it, you could always use one of those. So.
Right. Yeah. If you're packaging up additional content instead of just the course, you might need to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Second part of this question, Corey, this may be for you. Does your plugin slow web speed?
Does it slow web speed? It's
I guess any plugin.
Kind of a relative term. So our plugin itself does not contribute to slowing your web page down. We do, depending on what page you load, like the courses page, we do add some CSS for basic styling. But a lot of the speed aspects of your site are going to come down to your theme, how your theme is set up, how it's implemented, how your theme uses WP Courseware to display courses and quizzes and all that stuff. But we try and leave a minimal impact on the speed part of your site. We only render what you need, what the student or user needs to see at that specific moment. So, and we try and use other techniques like, asynchronous processing and Ajax for quizzes and questions, so it feels snappier. So obviously there's always improvement to make, but our plugin should not contribute to your site being slow.
Yeah, just to kind of bounce off that, what Corey said about it being relative, it really is relative. You have there's so many different layers of different things that can affect your speed. Like your web hosting server. Are you using, a $3 a month hosting service, or are you paying $30 a month?
Exactly.
That's gonna make a huge difference. Are you caching your site? Are you using Cloudflare? If you really think about it, your entire site of WordPress consists of code that processes. So every time somebody loads a page, all of WordPress processes, including your theme, your plugins, and queries are made in between those. And so if you don't have plugins and your theme isn't utilizing queries efficiently, then it will slow your site down. If you're using images that aren't compressed, on your website, that takes a while to load. So there's just so many different aspects to that contribute to the speed of your website. So what Corey said I love is we try to be very careful with how we execute WP Courseware, in that we only call scripts and things like that only when you need them, and not on every single load or every single page load, because there's certain instances, if you're looking at a blog post, there's no reason why our shopping cart scripts should load up on that call. So there's just so many different things that we try to consider. We want to make sure that WP Courseware doesn't slow your site down. So that's a really good question, though.
It is a good question. Yeah, and Google's free tools work pretty well for this, using their page speed extension. Actually, that's built into Chrome now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
You can just analyze it right from the browser in the developer tools and see what might be slowing you down. And yeah, I second the images. That's guilty as charged. I used to just throw 3 and 4 megapixel or megabyte photos up in blog posts, and
yeah.
And a lot of it too, nowadays you have, you have web fonts. So you have, kind of like these, Font Awesome, and you have these web icons, and those are kind of based on SVGs, which load a little bit faster. If you can use, SVGs or things that load a little bit quicker than an actual image, or even resort to using CSS instead of images, a lot of times you can control, colors and aspects of your site better with CSS than you can with an image, because CSS will always load faster than a full-blown image. So yeah. I try to keep my images limited, but I also compress them. I think there's a website called tinypng.com or tinyjpeg.com, something like that.
Yeah.
And you can go and you can run your images through there and actually compress it to a point where it still looks good, but it loads much faster because it's compressed. They remove some of the pixels in there that cause the file size to be larger.
Yeah. There's TinyPNG, there's TinyJPEG. I mean, there's a bunch of tools out there to be able to do this.
Smush It. Is that the one we use for a while?
Yeah.
Smush It. Yeah, I think that's a plugin I think you can use for WordPress.
Right. Yeah. It'll handle all that automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
plus clean up your old stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, in addition to the Google's speed analyzer that it uses, another great tool is called webpagetest.org. It's free, and it gives you basically a breakdown of every aspect of speed of your site, minus the internal queries and stuff like that. But it'll tell you which images are big. It'll tell you how long it took to load, how long it took on a re-render. So like they'll load it the first time and then they'll load it a second time to see if it improved based off of caching and stuff like that. So webpagetest.org is a great resource to use in addition to any tool that Google puts out. So
yeah.
Awesome. All right. And the last part of this 3-part question, and I couldn't think of any good examples. Maybe you guys have seen some, but recommendations for landing pages to link to a course. I was going to take a look at Joseph's for Scrivener. I don't know if he still has that up or not.
So are we talking about just creating a sales page for a course outside of WordPress, or are we talking about internal within their own website?
It just says landing page.
So
I'm assuming a sales page or a product page for the course itself.
Yeah. So I don't know that there's any templates. It's interesting. I was doing a little bit of writing on this yesterday. And let me just pull up I can give you a quick rundown of something I kind of came up with here that kind of will get you through sort of a template sort of thing. Let's see here. So what you could do, this is kind of a really basic outline of what you could use for your sales page. obviously you want to have a unique selling point. I mean, what's the objective for your course? What are your students going to walk away with? I mean, you want to be very clear and concise with how you communicate that, and you got to do that up front, because you want to make sure you qualify your students that are coming in. I mean, if you have a course that's for beginners, you don't want somebody that's, you know, intermediate or at a professional level to come in and take your course, because they're likely going to ask for a refund. So you have to be very, very upfront about who this course is for, but also what are they going to walk away with once they take your online course. A lot of people will then kind of move on to maybe either a personal testimony or a transformation testimony of how they got to that position, or how they learned or achieved a specific goal with that type of information. So kind of a story. And then maybe you could move to maybe some headlines, you know, some headline ideas about your course, you know, just some general things that people are going to walk away with, maybe some smaller milestones that they're going to achieve within the course, or maybe even just some other skill sets they might achieve while taking your course. Then you could add features, like what features does your course have? Like what are you going to include in your course? What kind of features is your course going to incorporate? And then if you're seasoned in all of this and you have testimonials, you've got to put testimonials on your site, because that's social proof. And if you can get video testimonials, I would recommend using video testimonials aside from just using somebody's picture in a blurb, or just a blurb, because I mean, anybody can just write about anything. And then the very next section that I have in my template format here is to have an FAQ section. So you want to, you know, kind of look at what are some of the objections that people are going to have, you know, like, you know, if somebody comes to your site and says, oh, okay, there's this course, but yeah, you have a course and so does, you know, Joe down the street, and what makes you different? Why should I take yours instead of his? Well, you need to make sure you verify and state your value of what your course is going to provide to them. There's other objections, like, why is your course so expensive, or why is your course this or that? And you've got to answer those questions. I mean, if your course is expensive, well, hey, it's a 22-hour course and it's all video, and I've got over-the-shoulder examples and all of these things. So you need to have an FAQ section just to kind of deal with all the objections that people might have. And then obviously at the very end, you could have maybe a guarantee, you know, a 30-day guarantee, refunds, that kind of thing. That's kind of a basic outline for a template that I actually wrote about yesterday. I'm kind of going through this right now as we speak, but I think a landing page is very important. The other thing that I would recommend too is, you know, try to look up, you know, some articles about sales copy. I know Neil Patel has some good stuff. Copy Blogger has some good stuff. That way you can learn about wording and how you state things, and, you know, having a positive posture and things like that. And, you know, even when you're talking about something negative, you can spin it in a positive way. There's just various things, you know, using power words and things like that in your sales copy. So just be sure and do some diligence on your sales page. And then at the end of the day, there's always room for tweaking. You can always tweak. You can A/B test. I know Nate, he does a great job with this, with the A/B testing. I mean, we've done this even with our sales pages and things like that. And so play with it, work with it, tweak it. It's probably never gonna end. You're probably always gonna be tweaking and that sort of thing. But it's definitely a lot of fun.
Don't ever leave it static. And I'll follow that. I was going to say, this is one of those areas where it gets a little bit uncomfortable for some people, because this is truly, if you're selling a course, you want to go in the direction of that long form sales page that we have, you know, we've kind of come to think of it as maybe a little bit sleazy and too salesy, but it works for courses. And Ben, I'll second what you said with the bonuses. You have to give them they just can't refuse it. You know, you're giving them $5,000 worth of value for $297, because psychologically that stuff works. And I also like what you said about the objections and just being upfront about them. Mm-hmm. And I took a sales copy course with Fizzle, the guys over at Fizzle, not too long ago. And their recommendation was to think about, you know, put yourself in somebody's shoes, think like your customer would, every step of the process, from finding out who you are and about your course to researching it to pulling out their credit card. And looking for an email, a confirmation email, go through the whole process and think about what objections they might have. Maybe they don't know who you are, so they don't trust a credit card on your site. Just come right out and say it. This is who we are. You can feel comfortable with us. So yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, and I think when you don't have the credibility or the authority in your space, I think one thing that you can do is just use personal testimony. I mean, obviously you're you're teaching, so that means that you're considered the expert in this at that point. But how did you get there? So you can even talk about your pain points. Like, I used to be at this point in life, and then I got to this point in life. And how did you get from A to B? How did you learn this skill set or this technique or this thing that you're teaching about? How did you get from point A to point B? You kind of give your testimonial. Like, you can say stuff like, it took me, 5 years to get to this level. I can teach you how to do this in 6 months. I can save you time. If you save people time and if you save people money, that's a huge deal. I mean, that's adding a ton of value into your course, and be upfront. Obviously, be honest. Don't try to deceive, because if you deceive, then you're going to end up with refund requests, and and nobody's happy at that point. Just be honest about the whole thing. So it's an art. That I think marketing is definitely an art. Sales copy is an art. Nobody's ever written a book that can just tell you from point A to point B how to just do this and get it right the first time. There's just no way, because it takes trial and error, it takes experience, it takes A/B testing out. There's so many different facets to marketing.
Yeah. True. It's fun to talk about always. When we get the marketing questions. All right, that was about it. We have one more quick question in the queue here. Cool. It was about WP Courseware installation. And we have a lot of documentation and a lot of awesome YouTube videos, thanks to Ben, that can help you out with any of our products.
Yeah, we've got some good documentation. One of the things we're working on too with WP Courseware is really just the intuitiveness of it, just, working on the user interface and just making it so that it's out of the box, pretty relatively easy to use. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but like over the years, when you buy, tech or electronics, you don't usually get a catalog of instructions anymore. Like, things are just kind of intuitive. Like, Apple will never give you a set of instructions. My parents just bought an Apple TV about a week ago, and I set it up for them. It's funny, you open the box and there's this little quick install guide. Basically just shows you what the ports are in the back, and that's about it. There's no how to, there's no step 1 through step 20. It's just, it's intuitive, and that's kind of how Apple works. It's very intuitive. So we're working towards that. Not saying that our documentation is going to go away. It's definitely going to be there, but we just want our product to be intuitive in and of itself, so that you're not having to look for help or search for help or documentation and things like that.
Right. That's the end goal, is not to have to need it to get going, because we all know how that is when you make the effort to finally buy something or commit to doing something and you get stuck on that first step. That's super frustrating. So we don't want that, especially something like this where we want you to have as much momentum as possible, because courses take a lot of work.
Yes, they do.
So, okay. Well, that's all we had from the last 4 weeks that we've accumulated in here.
Cool.
Yeah.
So basically, I wanted to mention a couple of things here. The first one is that we just released version 4.6.3 of WP Courseware. And there was a couple of cool things that happened in this particular version. I'll let Corey talk about the first one, which is Strong Customer Authentication, or SCA compliance, which you've probably heard a lot of chatter about. So, and I know we briefly touched on this in the last office hours, but Corey, you want to just quickly mention what you did in WP Courseware just to get that into compliance?
Yeah, so this was the main feature of the release. This is the reason why we did a 4.6.3 instead of a 4.7 release, which is what we're working on right now. So Strong Customer Authentication. So on September 14th, the EU put into place new requirements for authenticated online payments. And it's introduced as part of the Second Payment Services Directive, or PSD2 is what it's called. And it basically says that if your business is located in the EU, if your bank is located in the EU, or you serve customers in the EU, and they purchase something from your store or from your course, from your website, they may be subject to additional authentication when the transaction is processed, such as something the customer knows, something the customer has, or something the customer is. Okay, it's just the next step into preventing online fraud. And so there's quite a few requirements that came out that needed to be implemented inside WP Courseware, because we do process transaction with Stripe and with PayPal. And so we spent some time to bring our plugin in line with those requirements. And we didn't quite make the September 14th deadline, but we did it very soon after. But WP Courseware is now compliant and ready to go with Strong Customer Authentication. So anybody that does business in the EU, they can use WP Courseware and be confident that anytime additional authentication is required for a customer with an online transaction, that we will ask that additional information, and that it'll be able to process the transaction normally, or a subscription for that matter. So it was really just intended to be compliant, although the EU technically, there's different dates on when the EU is actually gonna require this, but the deadline was September 14th, and I believe we released it just a couple days after that, so we were a little bit late, but overall we did get it in, and I think it's going to be a good feature going forward. So
yeah, so one other thing on SCA compliance, just to take note of, we also caught wind that Stripe checkout is going to be changing
yes.
in the future. So we left in Stripe checkout right now currently, and it does still work. We did test it, and it does still work. But in the not too distant future, it's actually going to completely change. So if you're not familiar with checkout is just basically a modal that opens up on your website, so that it looks like the transaction happens on your website when it's really happening somewhere else. But in the future, I believe you will be taken away from your website to a Stripe site, kind of like PayPal does it now for the PayPal standard.
That's right.
And then you'll be redirected back. But that change will go into effect in sometime in the future. When it does, we'll make the change, and then we'll notify you. But for now, it's still there and it still functions, just in case you were wondering.
Yeah, and we may make an adjustment to the Stripe checkout. So we'll have Stripe checkout available. So the new feature of Stripe. And if you want more information about it, you can always go to Stripe's website and look at their new version of their checkout, quote unquote. But we may implement a slightly different feature that looks like Stripe checkout, but is not necessarily Stripe checkout. So more details on that to come, but it won't happen for a bit. So you can still use the current features.
Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Oh, I was going to say, they also mentioned although they're phasing it out in the short term, if you are doing business in the EU or the EEA, the European Economic Area, they have built SCA compliance into checkout for the transition. So you'll still be good to go.
So it's still compliant. It's still good to go. Yeah.
Yeah, great job, Corey, on that. I know that that was kind of kind of came down the pike, kind of out of the blue, and we kind of had to adjust.
Out of the blue for us, yeah.
Well, it really was, because we were in the middle of 4.7, which Corey was writing at the time. This kind of became the forefront very quickly, because we had the deadline to work towards. So, thank you, Corey, for growing a few gray hairs and getting that.
Yes.
That punched
many
out.
Gray hairs.
Yes.
Yeah. No, this is why I have a shaved head. But
Just for the record, Corey's younger than I am.
Hey.
So
just
anyway,
genetics.
right. So one other thing I wanted to really quickly just chat about here is that we actually, so this is not a feature in WP Courseware, but we teamed up with the guys from Grassblade. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Grassblade. Grassblade is a learning record store, which is a service. And so basically what their deal is they write integrations for learning management systems to interact with their service, which is the LRS. Now, if you're not familiar with like XAPI or Tin Can or SCORM, these are all standards that learning management systems use, and actually I think there's some educational institutions that require that you use this because it's a standard. And so now the cool thing is we have an integration with Grassblade. So the guys from Grassblade reached out to us, and we sat down and we figured how to communicate what happens within WP Courseware so that when things happen, like you complete a unit, or you can even insert content from another learning management system type like Articulate or Storyline, which includes quizzes. I think there's a whole list of other types of educational software that you can use. We have a list on our site. We wrote a blog post about this about a week ago. And so there's a whole lot of information there. But the cool thing is we have integration now. And so WP Courseware talks to the LRS and LRS talks back, so that, if you have, let's just say, an Articulate quiz, the quiz will not only record to the LRS, but it'll also record back to our gradebook, so that you see the actual grade in there taken within that quiz. So if it's not a native WP Courseware quiz, it still gets recorded into the gradebook, which is really cool. So the cool thing is that the add-on or the integration is a free integration that's offered up on WordPress.org. You can download it for free. Now, obviously, you do have to pay for the Grassblade service for the LRS. But if for some reason it's required within your industry, you now have a method to use all these other different types of tools. Some of the tools are H5P, Articulate, Adobe Captivate, Lectora, iSpring, and there's a few others. But if you want the full list, just come over to the website and check out the blog. But it's a cool addition that we added, and it would just so happened that it was right around the time of our release for 4.6.3. So
Yeah,
good stuff there.
it's a good integration. You should go check it out.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, but with so much education coming online and that being fragmented with all sorts of different solutions to deliver it, it's good that we have some standards that people can work with, because you leave college, all your records are at the college, but it doesn't work quite like that these days.
Yeah, and we had a handful of people that had come to us asking for this integration since our initial release of WP Courseware back in 2012. We've had people coming in, and at that time they were asking for SCORM. SCORM was kind of the old standard. XAPI is the new standard, which is also known as Tin Can API. Tin Can API is just kind of the code name for it or whatever, but XAPI is the new standard, which is basically SCORM, but they took SCORM and they improved it a whole lot more. So if you have SCORM compliant type material, you can convert that to XAPI. From what I understand, I've not done it personally because I don't have any XAPI content or anything like that. But from what I understand, the transition from SCORM to Tin Can API is not that difficult.
It's kind of like Windows versus Mac, right?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So
two good ones there.
And then the only other little minor thing is we did update Churnly to adhere to some of the changes done with WooCommerce and easy digital downloads in relationship to SCA compliance. but Corey was able to get that one done rather quickly. So yeah, a couple of our plugins got a little bit of a facelift this month. So good stuff there. And we're working on 4.7 right now, which is exciting stuff. Hopefully we'll have that out soon.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, when are we up next? Let's see here. Oh, wow. It'll be October already. We're looking at the 25th of October.
Yep.
We'll be back.
Sounds good.
So between now and then, if anybody has any questions, feel free to hit us up on our office hours page, flyplugins.com/office-hours. And you can submit your question there. We'll record it and we'll get to it on the next call.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And this is going out on YouTube as well. So if you've not subscribed to our channel, would you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell so that you're notified when new stuff just like this gets released. Yeah, keep your eyes open. We got some cool stuff coming out in the next month or so. Not only with WP Courseware, but there's some other things we've got in the works. Nate's been working on some cool stuff, and likewise I have. And so we hope to have some new things coming out soon.
Absolutely.
All right.
Ooh, sorry about that. Going out with a bang.
Well, thanks everybody for watching, and we will see you next month, October 25th, 1 p.m. Eastern.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.